والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم تقبل منا يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين ارحمنا بالقرآن واجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل وأطراف النهار واجعله لنا حجة ولا علينا يا أرحم الراحمين. Just that last dua, inshallah, I thought we'll start with this. I mentioned Allah, Ya Arham ar-Rahimin, Arhamna bil Quran, have mercy of us through the book of Allah, the Quran. وَاجْعَلْهُ لَنَا إِمَامًا وَنُورًا وَرَحْمَةً, and make it a form of guide. Imam wa rahmah, also a form of mercy for us, inshallah, that we follow this light, this nur, and this guidance. Allahumma dhakkirna minhu ma nasina. Allah, Ya Allah, let us remember that of the Quran which we have forgotten. Maybe some of us, for example, have gone into some hifz and have some things that we need to go back and strengthen. So may Allah make us of those in this month that are accepted for this. So we make a New Year's resolution to go back and regather what we might have memorized and bring it back again into our life. وَعَلِّمْنَا مِنْهُ مَا جَهِلْنَا. And this is a beautiful dua, that Ya Allah, educate us or enlighten us in what? With what we have not understood of the Quran. Our juhl means like our ignorance, our own ignorance. Ya Allah, give us the ilm of us to understand more of this Quran. And this majlis that we are here today is a part of us, inshallah, forming this intention. وَارْزُقْنَا تِلَاوَتَهُ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ وَأَطْرَافَ النَّهَارِ. And also what? Give us the ability to be able to read the Quran in the depths of the night when all those that are asleep, and also أطراف النهار, also in parts of the day. Because we all know that, guys, during the day, وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ وَمَعَاشًا, we provide the day for you to go out to work and provide sustenance and bring sustenance to your family. So what we have here is we're saying, أطراف النهار, may Allah give us the ability, for example, on our breaks, for example, if we're waiting for someone, we're at a clinic, whatever it is, that we have that time, instead of us idling and talking useless talk, that we spend that time to open up the Mus'haf and get ourselves closer to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. And the last part says, وَاجْعَلْهُ لَنَا حُجَّةً وَلَا عَلَيْنَا. Ya Allah, provide the Quran what? حُجَّةً لَنَا. It provide a form of intercession on the day of judgment. وَلَا عَلَيْنَا, but don't make it a form of intercession that goes against us. And we say Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. Allah yabarik fikum. Now what we're going to do, inshallah, we started Surah al-Naazi'aat. And the Naazi'aat, remember we spoke about an-Naazi'aat are the ones that pluck out. What are they plucking out? Or they're pulling out or tearing out? They are who? They were the angels. And we started with the first theme, verses 1 to 5 being the oaths by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And an oath, we said, is a form of grabbing the attention of the listener. When we have the qasam, so we have qasam being an oath, and then we have jawab al-qasam. Jawab al-qasam is, I'm making, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes these oaths, or even a parent might make these oaths, wallahi, wallahi, if you do not make sure that you put your clothes back into, if you tuck away your clothes, or you make sure to fix your bed, this will be happening. When you say wallahi, wallahi, the people start to listen. Allah's using the same here, and He's drawing their attention to what? To that next thing being describing the day of judgment. And now what does He also do? He quotes the mockery of the disbelievers and the warning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against this mockery of this day. Now what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? The next part we have is He's going to now bring up the next thing being theme 4, and this is verses 15 to 26. That He now brings what? He starts to talk about a story of Moses. And why would He do that when He just started to quote the mockery of the disbelievers? Because this ties in very well with the story of Musa and Fir'aun, the very, very famous story. And they say the story of Musa is the most mentioned Nabi in the whole Quran. many of the Sahaba would say that we thought the Quran would eventually be the story of Musa. Why? Because of the lessons learned. So for example, if we're going to Baqarah, the multiple lessons and wisdoms that we have from the story of Moses. The story of Moses with his own people. The story of Moses with Pharaoh, Fir'aun, and tyrants. The story of Moses with the too many questions by his people that made things difficult for themselves. The lessons are amazing, and that is why Allah keeps mentioning the story of Musa, and he is one of the 5 greatest Anbiya amongst all the prophets that were sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another great thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa. Now, before we go into it, inshallah, we need to talk about the story of Musa. And what it says is verse 15 talks about, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى. Has not the story of Moses come to you, ya Quraysh, O people of the Arabian Peninsula, and for all of time, because this Quran is eternal. The story of Musa. What happened now? The story of Musa is very important. Now, many of the stories of the qasas that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran is for our own what? Reflection, and for us to contemplate these stories and what happened to previous nations. And Pharaoh, guys, if they say in the books of history, he was actually recognized as the Ramses II, that some believe that he was Ramses II. And to now, he's still preserved. If anyone's been to Egypt, when I visited the pyramids, they're still preserved. Many of the pharaohs are preserved body, complete body. You actually see how they actually looked. And this was another thing that Allah mentions in the Quran, that he preserved them as a lesson for us. Ramses II, the story says that he had over 950 wives, that he had thousands of children. The power that he had was never, ever, would never be something that can be matched by any king or power ever before. And this obviously different to our King Sulaiman. King Sulaiman had a different power, as in he was given a kingdom that none can be ever given, because he was able to speak to animals and many miracles. But as in someone of a secular level that didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this man, Fir'aun, Ramses II, they believe, was the most powerful. What happens? Now Musa's mother wants to give birth to a boy. A very quick recap of the story of Musa. She wants to give birth. She knows it's a boy. When she gives birth to a boy, that year was the year where they said what? That 1 year they're going to be killing boys, and 1 year they're not going to be killing boys. And the reason that came was because what happened is they heard from the scholars around them and from Bani Israel that there's going to be a young boy that will be born to take away the kingdom of who? Of Pharaoh. So when he heard this news, he said, very simple, I'm a very powerful man. I'm just going to kill off all the boys. But what happened is eventually it got so bad that the people around him and his advisors, they said, look, we need to stop killing boys because we're not going to have enough manpower. So what happened is they said, all right, 1 year on, 1 year off. The 1 year on, his brother Harun was what? Born. That was the year where they weren't killing boys. However, the year that his brother Musa was born, what happens? They say he was meant to be killed that year. We all know the story where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives ilham, and he gives a form, and this is something for us we even use it today. He gave it that form of intuition. He told his mother what? To put him in a what? A tabut, so a small box, and put him in the river, the Nile River. She was obviously very concerned for him. Where does this go and end up? It ends up in the house of where? It ends up in the house of Pharaoh himself. So what happens now? We all understand now the story is who ends up taking care of him. We all know that he ends up getting taken care of by the Pharaoh's wife. When she saw the child, he actually ordered for that child to be killed. When she saw it, Allah wouldn't give her children. So when she saw that child, she had a beautiful love. Allah put extra love in her heart for this child. And she pleaded with Pharaoh to say, keep him alive and let us take care of him to be an adopted son. He grows in the house of Pharaoh himself. So Pharaoh's greatest enemy in future to take down his kingdom is the one that's taking care of him himself. He goes out when he grows the story is that he had a bit of a scuffle with amongst Bani Israel, where there was a man that was taking advantage of him and abusing him. The strength of Musa, they say that it was just a small push, and the man hit himself and actually died in that state. Now, what happened is the people, the advisors around Musa said, leave this area because they've heard of what happened and you are going to be executed. So he goes to an area, a local area called Madian. And what happens there with the area of Madian, he goes in and gets taken care of by Nabi Shu'aib. And how did that happen? A very quick thing is that he sees two girls watering and trying to water their sheep and also feed their sheep. What happens is no one was helping them and there was a massive lid on top of the well. So what he did is when he saw the two girls, he went to help them. And what he did in that time is that when he helped them, he sat back down on his tree and he made dua to Allah that anything that comes from you, Allah, that truly I'm faqir, I am someone that is poor and in need, and to send some help. When the girls went back to their father, what did they do? They told him about this man. They told him about his good qualities. And what happens is they went back. What did they do? They went back to him and said, my father is asking about you and wants to compensate you for your hard work that you've done for us. He goes back and he says to the girls, he says, I want you to be behind me and I'll walk in front of you. And this is symbolic of what the great character that our Nabi Musa alayhi salam had, that he had great humility and great respect for women, to say that he did not want them in front of him so that he will make sure that he's lowering his gaze. When he gets to the house, Nabi Shu'aib, he speaks to Musa. After they speak, what happens is one of the daughters, and this is important for us as a matter of fiqh as well, one of the daughters says to the father Shu'aib, Istajir for what is he? Innahu qawiyyun ameen. So he's what? He is strong and he is trustworthy. He understood this, the father understood this, that this actually daughter, she liked Nabi Musa. She liked his character. And what he responded with was saying that I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage for what? For you to work for me for 8 years. But if you complete the 10, then that is from your own accord and your own good doing. The Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, they said, what did Musa end up doing? Did he end up doing the 8 or the 10? They said, Prophet ﷺ said, the Anbiya always go with what's most complete, and he ended up doing the 10 years. In this time, we all know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now inspires to Nabi Musa. He speaks to the Nabi Musa when he becomes a prophet. He shows him the signs. He shows him what had happened. And then what happens here, guys, is he showed him the signs of the snake becoming a staff, his staff holding becoming a snake, and then also his hand being pulled out being completely white. So now what did he tell him? His mission was to go to where? To Fir'aun, to go and visit Fir'aun. And what he did is he said to him, look, I'm going to now, when he responded to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, I have a difficulty when I speak. And they say, some of the historians say that when he was young, his tongue was actually distorted. So he beat onto something that was a bit hot, and that his speech wasn't complete. He couldn't speak properly. So what did he say? He says, yeah, he asks Allah, and he makes a beautiful dua. He says, Ya Allah, make my brother a Nabi with me. And that's what they say, that Aisha mentions this, that there was no greater dua by a person or love for a person than Nabi Musa for his brother Harun, and they both became prophets. They visited who? They visited the Fir'aun's palace. Okay, so now they're going in to visit Fir'aun. And what I'll do is I'm going to stop there because we're going to go to the second part of that story, and obviously it's a very summarized version. The Nabi Musa, many of the stories of the prophets that are given by many of the great ulama will take, for example, over like 10 seasons. But this is just a very small summary. And let's get into it, inshallah. And this is for the hadaf of us understanding these ayat. So verse 15, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى. So has not the story of Moses reached you, O Arabs and O people around you in that peninsula? It was a very famous story. What happened here? And now we go into it. This is now when he becomes a prophet. So he got married He's out with his family in the wilderness. And what happens now when he's out in the wilderness? He sees a fire or a light. And he says to his family, let me go out to get some source of information from this fire or light, and to also help us for sleeping and to blaze a fire for ourselves around our campfire. So when his Lord called out to him, إِذْ نَادَاهُ, نَادَاهُ means calling out. إِذْ نَادَاهُ رَبُّهُ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ طُوَى, that he called out to him in the sacred valley of Tuwa. And that what they call it now is they call it now into the foot of Mount Sinai in the land of Asham, which is the greatest Syrian peninsula. He said to him what? إِذْهَبْ إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ إِنَّهُ طَغَى. إِذْهَبْ means go. إِلَى who to Fir'aun. إِنَّهُ طَغَى. The word طَغَى means what? He transgressed all bounds. And how did he transgress these bounds? He did two major things. He was enslaving Bani Israel. And a quick question here and a bit of history as well. How did Bani Israel get into Egypt itself? So a rhetorical question here is what? Who ended up being in Egypt for example, a few generations before Musa, and he was part of the lineage? Bani Israel. The word Bani Israel, Israel means the guided one. It was another name for who? The prophet Yaqub, the prophet Jacob. He gave birth to who? To 12 sons. And one of those 12 sons was who? Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. We have a whole chapter dedicated in the Quran that was sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet, talking about the story of Yusuf. And the reason this revelation came down was because it was in the Am al-Huzn, the year of sorrow for the Prophet ﷺ, where he lost his two dearest people in his life, his uncle Abu Talib and his most beloved Khadija radiyallahu anha, the one where Aisha would say, I was never jealous of any of the wives of the Prophet more than I was jealous of Khadija that was not even alive. Because any time her name was mentioned, it would bring tears to the Prophet ﷺ's eyes. So to go there now, so Yusuf's story, we all know it. He ends up what? Being enslaved, ends becoming a slave in Egypt, grows up, and then actually becomes one of the greatest financial ministers in Egypt. So that means what did he do when he was having the issues with his brothers and his father and his mother? He said, now go bring your brothers and now bring your father and mother over to where? Egypt. And they now resided in Egypt. So the history line is that is why Bani Israel, which is the sons of Jacob, all stayed in the Egyptian area. But over time, and they actually say before Ramses II, there was a time where there was like a time where one of the pharaohs actually became a Muslim, and they became people that of Iman. And they say that was closer to the time of Yusuf alayhi salam. But what happened is over time that they obviously fought that off again and brought back in to do what? Pharaoh's, the second transgression of Pharaoh, he enslaved Bani Israel. And what he did, the second thing he did after fighting them, he said that now, I am a Rabb. He actually claimed himself to be a God. Wa'udhu billah. These are the two greatest transgressions. So now Allah says, go to him, go to Pharaoh because he has transgressed all bounds. And tell him what? You, Ya Musa, and your brother Harun. So I'm just doing a bit of a feelings because this comes in from other ayat of the Quran. His brother Harun. So they go together. They speak to Pharaoh and they say, فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّى. And Allah also encourages them in another verse to say, speak to them words of softness and dialogue so that you can win their hearts over. We are not people that are harsh. So فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَّا أَن تَزَكَّى. The word tazakka comes from the word zakat. Why do we use the word zakat? Tazakka means to cleanse ourselves. And we say we give zakat to cleanse ourselves, we cleanse our money, and we cleanse our sins. وَأَهْدِيَكَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَتَخْشَى. And what would I do? So I can guide you to your Lord. إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَتَخْشَى. And on top of that, I'm going to guide you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also so that you have fear of Him. The fear that He is deserving of. Not a fear of someone being scared, but a fear of adoration and respect and love. And this is no greater example than our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ doing this for this ummah. Alhamdulillah. Now, فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. Now here we go. This is going to be now the second part of the story. فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. Moses showed him a great sign. Now what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed signs to Musa before. We said they had his staff, it became a snake. He had his hand that was normal, became pure white, right? Shining. What happens now is the story behind this. فَأَرَاهُ الْآيَةَ الْكُبْرَى. When he came to him, when they were in dialogue, Musa showed him some of these signs. So he actually showed his staff becoming a serpent. And he also showed his hand becoming pure white. When Fir'aun saw this, he said to Musa, and we know every time a Nabi comes, a Prophet comes, they come with certain miracles. And for Moses' time, it was what? It was sorcery. So if we look at it, if we think about it now today, it's like the Harry Potter, right? So sorcery was very common at that time. Another thing where Isa came down, he came down where healing and medicine was a very important thing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him with miracles of medicine and healing. So now, what he did, when he said that, Fir'aun saw it and he had his advisors around him, what did they say to him? They said that these men are what? They are sorcerers. They're trained sorcerers. So they responded to him, the advisors around Fir'aun, they said, you can't obviously accept these words from this man Musa. So what we should do what? Let's now go around and gather the best sorcerers that we have. So what they did, Fir'aun said, I'm going to put you a challenge. I'm going to now get the best of my sorcerers and they're going to go up against you, ya Musa, and your brother. So what happens now, as they have big events, this magic event, they called out the people, they did massive announcements, big invitations for all the neighboring towns and areas. So it was a big day. It was like a festival, customary festival day, where they come in and they celebrate their sorcery. And that's how Fir'aun would bring people to worship himself. Now what happened, when everyone heard about this, they were eager. So the crowds came about in big number. What they did is when it came to that time, the sorcerers came to Fir'aun and they said to him, would we be given a good compensation? And he said, truly you will be with me, not only compensated, but you'll be with me closely and become part of my my kingship. So they were very eager. When it happened, they say it started, and then they asked the question. The Prophet, they asked Musa, do you want to start or should we start? And then Musa said to them, what? You start. So they sent out, and they basically what they do is a form of, we all know even today, is magicians work in, it's sort of like they deceive people. So we think we're seeing something, but it's actually something else. So they're putting out false serpents or false, for example, projects. They're wriggling around, pretending to be like a serpent. Now what happens is when they did that, people were applauding, people were clapping them on. It's like, wow, they had these little sort of material things now running around like serpents. Now what happens is after this applaud, now it's up to who? It was up to Musa. And they actually say that Musa had a bit of fear at that time. And Allah responds to him what? He gave ilham that do not fear Musa, and what? Release your staff. So he threw his staff. They say his staff became a massive, enormous serpent that went around swallowing each part that was sent out by each magician as a false serpent itself. So the magicians around them actually saw that this wasn't just deception. This was the real deal, because he swallowed everything up, and on top of that, they say the serpent came back to Musa, and it became a what? It became a staff again in his hand. Now what happened here? Can you guys imagine if the crowds were seeing this, what was going on? They say everyone was standing and applauding, everyone was cheering, screaming was happening. It was big. So that means now Pharaoh and his advisors and his armies around him were defeated. On top of that, not only were they defeated, but what happened is now we have the magicians themselves. What did they do? The magicians, the greatest magicians of the whole area, they say that they went down in sujood. فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدِينَ فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدِينَ قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ Rabbi Musa wa Harun. They say, فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدِينَ. They went down in what? In prostration. قَالُوا آمَنَّا. We believe رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Musa wa Harun. Because they knew Musa and Harun were from Bani Israel that give da'wah to what? To Tawheed and to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did Fir'aun respond to? He said to them that this was a plan and plot that you guys did before this. So it was like a sort of like a, let's say it's like a scheme that was happening in the background. And he said to them that if you do not go back and worship me, I will cut you into pieces and crucify you on the trunks of palm trees to be examples for others. And they say that their life was so short as believers, their whole life. And this is, we know many stories like this. Like I've known many stories of people are preachers of Christianity their whole life. In the last few days, they become Muslim and they die as believers. And this was an example for them. Their whole life, they were misleading people with sorcery. And when they saw Hidayah, they became Muslim and died as martyrs. They died as martyrs. And they only died as martyrs and believers doing what? One rak'ah itself, that one prostration, and they entered Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those. So what did he do after seeing all these great signs? فَكَذَّبَ وَعَصَى. He denied and disobeyed. So he made excuses. He said, what? This is something you guys planned and plotted. And then what did he do as well? فَكَذَّبَ وَعَصَى. And then he told also them, he said, look, not only do I disbelieve with what you guys have done, but I'm also going to punish you for those sorcerers that actually ended up believing. ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ يَسْعَى. What did he do? He turned away in a hurry. What was he turning away in a hurry doing? He was going back to plot against Musa alayhi salam, because he knew now the crowds were all backing up Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and they also saw what happened to the sorcerers. Even though he killed them, people now, belief was starting to enter the hearts of the people. It was great da'wah. So he now, in seeing this, was starting to panic. How am I going to bring people back to where they should be worshipping me alone, instead of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa a'udhu billah. So فَحَشَرَ فَنَادَى. What did he do? He called the people. فَحَشَرَ يوم الحشر, or Surah al-Hashr means to gather. فَحَشَرَ فَنَادَى. Fanada means I'm calling out. He's calling out to the people. And this is, his gathering was obviously his people and his army. فَقَالَ. What did he say? Going in to remind these people. فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. فَقَالَ, I am truly your supreme Lord, and do not forget this. And anyone that they say that renegated or went against this were executed and killed or tormented. What happened here? And the greatest example here was through Bani Israel. And on top of that, we also know, guys, when you say فَكَذَّبَ وَعَصَى with these signs, it wasn't just the sign of the sorcery of that event. The signs also were what? He sent down plagues. He sent down the rivers of blood. He sent down locusts. He sent down sign after sign to come back. And they will say, Ya Musa, and it comes in other ayah, Ya Musa, if Allah gives us relief, make dua to Allah, we will believe. He will give them relief, and what they will do, they will go back as disbelievers. This is showing you the state of a disbeliever. Internally, they will never believe and will keep going back, making excuses. So what did Allah do? The end result is one thing. فَأَخَذَهُ اللَّهُ. أَخَذَهُ means he seized him. نَكَالَ الْآخِرَةِ وَالْأُولَى. The nakal, this is very important. The nakal is it's sort of like an example. I've made an example of this person for what? For people to take heed. Okay, now, so for example, what Allah says here, so you bring in, he mentions the verse before, فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. Right? Now, he's claiming he's Allah. Allah is claiming he's Allah. So now what's happening is, if we look at it, it's like we give an example of a duel, where, for example, in the olden days, let's say the cowboy days, they had two people going in, bringing out their guns, and will fight to see who's going to shoot first. Or even at the time of the Prophet, in the Battle of Badr, for example, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he had a duel with a mushrik. And that was something they would do before battle. Why would they do that? They would do it to either encourage each party or each part of that nation. So it's like a psychological thing. It brings them up. But what happened here, after all that we see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, okay, you're claiming you're Allah, and I'm claiming that I'm Allah through our Nabi Musa and Anbiya. What was the ending for you through this duel or this battle? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَخَذَهُ اللَّهُ نَكَالَ الْآخِرَةِ وَالْأُولَى. He made it, not only was he punished or taken, but he was also used as an example for generation to generation to generation. If any of you were to visit Egypt or have studied Egyptian history, you will notice that the mummification process is, when you see them, when I was seeing some of the pharaohs, it's like you're seeing a human being. It just doesn't have a ruh in there. So this greatest tyrant, the claiming that I'm a Rabb, the most powerful man on a secular level, what happens? He is now in front of you and you're watching over to take heed for us today. So now, what happens next? Inna fi dhalika la'ibratan liman yakhsha. This is the whole key and purpose of the story of Musa being mentioned over and over and over again in the Quran. Why? Because it's a lesson for those that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a reminder, guys, even if we are believers, we have something called a nafs. A nafs loves power. A nafs loves to be someone that was sought out by other people, to be someone that's special. Our nafs loves this. The power, we might not go around thinking, saying that we are God. But some people that act in a certain way against others, whether they're in positions of leadership or they're in positions of work or management, that become tyrants themselves. And Allah is giving this example and a reminder for myself and for all of you. We have a nafs and we have shaitan working against us. We need to be careful. We are never ever going to be as powerful as Fir'aun. But what you need to take heed is that if we go down that path, your ending will be the same as his. So we are people of humility. We are people of forgiveness. We are people of rahmah. And we never let our nafs run wild. Ali ibn Abi Talib says that this nafs is like a wild stallion. It needs to be taken charge. You need to take charge of it. And I like to always mention horses for our lovely Ustadh Itaoui. So taking charge of this is like the ruh underneath you. You don't just let it run wild, because when it runs wild, it's going to be destruction. So what we have here now, that's a beautiful little theme and the story of Musa that I tried to sort of justify in less than 30 minutes. Obviously, it's not enough, but there is going to be other mentions in the story of Musa. And every time it comes in, we'll try to bring in some beautiful little aspects to that story and what it means for us today. Now, the beginning of theme 5, it starts now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, what does he want us to do? The logical reasoning, proving the possibility of the day of judgment. So it goes back again, and we spoke about this. Juz Amma, many would call it as Juz Nahar al-Qiyamah, or Juz Yawm al-Qiyamah, or Yawm al-Hisab, a day of judgment. So if they talk about Juz, it's so much mention of the day of judgment. And look at the link now, specifying through the story of Musa and Fir'aun. So what is verse 27? أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ So what happens here? These are rhetorical questions given to us. أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاء بَنَاهَا Look at this reminder. Let's look at our intellect. So he's giving these questions for us to do what? To start to think and know that Allah can prove his ability to resurrect. Not like what Fir'aun was mentioning, that I'm a Rabb, but what kind of Rabb can't do this? So what does this our Rabb do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing he does, he reminds us of what he has done. أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاء بَنَاهَا Are you harder to create, or the skies that he has built above you? And think about it, when we look above us, do we actually see any cracks? Do we see any deformities? If anyone's a builder on here or knows building, no matter how good the builder is, there's going to always be deficiencies. There's always going to be a crack in a wall somewhere, something wrong with the foundation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation is perfect. If we look outside to the skies, we don't see any cracks or any issues. رَفَعَ سَمْكَهَا فَسَوَّاهَا What does the word رَفَعَ سَمْكَهَا فَسَوَّاهَا So what does here? So the word samk means the highest point, so the apex. Samkaha is the top of a thing. So for example, there's a bottle. Samkaha is the tip of that bottle. فَسَوَّاهَا means he perfected it. Designed, fashioned, and perfected it. What else did he do? This Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's done this, can he not bring us back to their judgment? وَأَغْطَشَ لَيْلَهَا وَأَخْرَجَ ضُحَاهَا and he darkened its night and brought forth its daylight. And as we mentioned this in Surah An-Naba as the great signs that we mentioned before. And on top of that, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا. And this is a reminder, guys, just a very quick reminder. This course that you guys are doing, most of us here are teachers. So the key here is this is something that you will be teaching and this will be delivering to your students bi'idhnillah. This is something, inshallah, that we're taking note and we're taking heed of this, inshallah. And as Ustadh Bilal and has been announcing through Brother Lu'ay, that we've also been putting up the posts and the videos for you guys to refer to these videos later, inshallah, when it comes to teaching. So, al-arda ba'da dhalika dahaha, that the ground as well. What did he do? He smoothed out this earth. And that what they did is, if you guys know in history, they actually used to think the earth was flat, right? So they wouldn't go to a certain area when they're on ships. They'll think they were going to fall through a waterfall. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through his miraculous nature, he designed the earth in a round form. However, when we're on there, it feels like it's something flat and it makes it easy for us as well. From it, what did he do? أَخْرَجَ مِنْهَا مَاءَهَا وَمَرْعَاهَا. What did he get from this beautiful earth that he created? They were able to bring forth minha ma'aha. Ma'aha is water. Wa mar'aha. And what is this? This is its meadows. So what does that mean? Mar'aha means something that animals can come and do what? They can graze or pasture the land. So I have 4 more minutes, inshallah. Wal jibal. What else did he do? Wal jibala ursaha. And he also firmly fixed the mountains. And we mentioned that in Surah An-Naba. You guys now should be able to bring this back when you're teaching this. To go back to say what? Remember? وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا, like pegs, and firmly fix the mountains. And we spoke about what the mountains play as a role in this dunya. مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. All of this, Ya Allah. All of this you did for what? As a benefit for you. مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. Lakum means for you, O Bani Adam, and وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ, and for your animals that benefit you. The benefits of animals, guys, we know are huge. Whether we're using their coats, whether we're eating from them, whether we're drinking their milk. Everything we have today in most of our shops is because of animals from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah does this what? So we can be people that are grateful. And we say, all of us, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Let us be people that are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we're going to the theme of Theme 6. So we're moving into discussing the day of judgment, and it goes again into discussing the consequences of believers and disbelievers, inshallah. So these ones we can go through, push a little bit more because it's something that was mentioned in Surah An-Naba. When the great overwhelming calamity arrives, فَإِذَا جَاءَتِ الطَّامَّةُ الْكُبْرَى. Now Allah uses past tense a lot in the Quran. فَإِذَا. So فَإِذَا is that when this great calamity occurs, or this great day occurs. Tammatul, like example, tamma. Someone might say example of the news, and never this happens, like the news of losing a child, for example. Tammatul kubra, the great calamity or overwhelming calamity. When Allah uses the past tense, it's because Allah is saying that the past, present, and future for Allah is one. That's number one as aqidah. Number two, the second most important thing is as if it's going to happen, it's like it's already happened. So if it's like it's already happened, it's a guarantee. Now why? يَوْمَ يَتَذَكَّرُ الْإِنسَانُ مَا سَعَى. I have 2 more minutes, inshallah. So يَوْمَ يَتَذَكَّرُ الْإِنسَانُ مَا سَعَى. This is the day that what? Man remembers what they have done. What they have done on this day. This is the day, so a lot of people say يَوْمُ الْحَسْرَةِ or يَوْمُ الْفَرْحَةِ. يَوْمُ الْحَسْرَةِ is a day very difficult for some and very good for others. Especially for those that are preparing for this day. Imagine those that haven't prepared for this day. What will be happening on this day? What happens now? وَبُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ لِمَنْ يَرَاهَا. And this is a very good way, Nizar. He said that the word baruza, we all mention this in weddings, so we have 1 more minute, inshallah. We have weddings. The word baruza, so when they're on display, وَبُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says now that hellfire will be on display to who? For all who can see. So that means as belief, we believe what? That we will be seeing the now Jahannam. All of us see it. فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى, and it comes again. The word طَغَى we mentioned about Fir'aun. فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى, so those that who rebelled and transgressed all bounds, وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا, so what did they do? They chose dunya over akhirah. They didn't have any boundaries. They did whatever they liked. وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا, athar means choosing. They're preferring it. فَإِنَّ الْجَحِيمَ, what's the result here? فَإِنَّ الْجَحِيمَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى, that they what? The hellfire is their what? The ma'wa means somewhere that is a refuge. So the refuge here is what? It's not a refugee as in being something of relief. The only relief is what? Now, Jahannam, for what their own hands are put forward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not force anyone into that position and that place. Wa barakallahu fikum. So this now, we're going in, inshallah, next lesson, we'll be talking about now this is the contrast with the disbelievers to the believers and what Allah will be giving the believers and their rewards, bi'idhnillah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. It's 1:30 inshallah. I'm assuming there's a